Okay, Daf. Chav Tzera Amud Aleph, 24 lines down from the top. We just spoke about the halacha of making your item hefker, and if your item is hefker, you'll still chayav for it. So the last opinion said Rabbi Yehuda, mafkir haskav. If he made his thing hefker, and he had intentions, no intentions, so my mitkavenika, what would be the intention regarding your shards of your pitcher on the floor? Mar Yosef, the mitkaven is kut b'charaseha. The rabbis say that it's referring to that when your thing broke, if you had in mind to reacquire the shards, then you'd be chayav. There's machloka between Chachamim and Meir in regarding to damage that happened at the time of the fall, which sounds like afterward. There's no machloket. What's the halacha after the damage, after the fall? Something happened after it fell. Does that mean it's patur over there? But we know the mayor holds that you're chayav. Elamai, what does it mean? Really, everybody holds you are chayav. But then that also doesn't make sense because it's mahloket of chachamim who hold it does not. You're patur. So elamai b'shan nefila. What does it mean that there's a machlok between the mayor and chachamim at the time of falling? Means af b'shan nefila. Even at the time of fall is machloket. The kamash b'lan k'dabaye, and therefore you're teaching the same halacha as Abaye. That what? Sorry, the same halacha as Abaye. There's two separate machlokets. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan is the achar nefila machloket is machloket after it fell. Aval b'shat nefila might well be happening during the time of falling. Divrei hakol patur, which means that it means you're patur. Rabbi Yochanan the command. This is just every time you would say a statement, you have to what does that infer? What would the inference of that mean of the second halacha? So if you just said according to Rabbi Yochanan that after the fall is machloket, that sounds like everybody agrees that during the time of falling it's not a machloket. That everybody would hold divrei hakol patur. But we say Rabbi Yochanan later on in a different Mishnah, lo tema matnitin Rimeiri, he said later on, don't establish the Mishnahs like Rimeir, that Amar nitkal posheah, that holds that someone who falls is considered a posheah, negligent. Michal Rabbi Meir mechayev, which sounds like Rimeir holds your chayav. Elamai, what does it must mean? Divrei hakol chayav. Really, everybody holds that the owner is chayav. V'hadim Rabbi Yochanan lekaman, and that which we said earlier, that later on, lo tema matnitin Rabbi Meir, that Rimeir, the Mishnah is like according to Rimeir, that he holds that someone who stumbles as chayav, which means he holds that just infers that if someone who falls is chayav for damaging that happened at that time. Sorry, patur for something that happened at that time. Okay. Now that we knocked out both ways. Now that we established that this halacha that if someone has something that's hefker is not chayav in this case, the anusu, because it's considered honest. But in general, if someone has something hefker, you are chayav if it's not an honest. It's different machloket. Mafkir is a kav, someone who made his item hefker. Without knowing who said what. One of them said chayav, one of them chayav. One of them said patur. Now we're going to play detective to figure out who said what. Maybe we should say that Meir is the one who holds chayav. The one who holds patur is chachamim. Where it says la, according to the Meir, everybody agrees that they are chayav. Where do they disagree? They disagree with chachamim. The one who holds that your patur agrees with chachamim. And the one who holds your chayav would say to you, I would even hold like Chachamim. The only time you're considered patur is where the guy fell. Because it's honest. But I would hold generally you are chayav. So now, we have to explain the machloket again. So maybe we can establish that Rabbi Lazar holds that you're chayav. Two things that if they're not in your reshut, right, generally if you have something in your possession, it doesn't belong to you. Right? If you say it's not mine, I don't want it to be mine, it's out of my possession, out of mine, out of sight, out of mind, it doesn't belong to you. However, two things Chachamim make it into your possession even if it's not there. Sorry, the Torah makes it, it's yours. What are the two ones? If you made a pit in public domain, right? You said, oh, I don't want this pit anymore. No. Too bad. You made it. You caused the danger. It's your responsibility. And the hametz mishisha od mallah. And hametz after 6 hours at Pesach, when you're asur to have chametz, if you don't take care of it, if you don't burn it, and you just throw it onto the street, it still belongs to you. So we see according to Rabbi Lazar that you're chayav for something that's hefker to stay in. Where it says, "Me amar Rabbi Lazar hachi," or Rabbi Lazar really hold that. Amar Rabbi Lazar ibcha. We have a different, exact opposite. The Tanakh Mishnah says, "Ha'ofechet hagalal b'shut harabim." There was dung in b'shut harabim, public, and the guy flipped it over. He turned it over. Pay attention. He didn't say he lifted it. Vehuzak b'hen acher, and then someone else got damaged by it. He slipped on it. Hayav bin iskod, the guy who turned it over is hayav for that person's damage, even though he didn't put the dung there in the first place. But Rabbi Lazar says, "Lo shano ela shinut kavin l'skut ben." The only time you're chayav when he tried to acquire it, then he ended up leaving it there. Aval lo nut kavin l'skut ben, but if he did not want to acquire it, patur is patur. So we hold that you're not chayav if he just left it there unless he owns it. Alma mafkin is a patur. Therefore, if you have something that does not belong to you, you're patur. No, that case is referring to where he put it back into the original position. Therefore, he's patur because he didn't create the hazard. It was the same hazard as there was before. Maravina tries to give an analogy. He says, "Mashal drav ada barava." What's a good mashal to compare it to? What's it comparable to? It's comparable to someone found a pit in Bishut Rabin. Someone else dug it. The second guy comes over and he covers it. Then he says, "You know what? I'm not getting involved," and he uncovers it. So he's putting back the original pit the way it was. He says, "1 second, not so pashut. Those cases are the same. In the first case of the pit, the first guy's sting wasn't undone. The pit was still there. But over here with the dung, you moved it. Right? It was undone, and you put it back to dung. We'll give you a better comparison to the case of the dung. The case of dung is compared to as if you found an open pit, filled it, then you undug it, then you dug it again. You undid the first deed of digging it, and therefore it's now in your reshut, it's your responsibility, your problem. Rashi says no. Rather, the case is not a case where he just turned it over less than 3 tfachim, right? So you didn't acquire it. It's not enough to turn it over. It does not become in your reshut. Gemara says, 1 second. It's very dohak, forced answer. Why do you have to establish? What forced Rabbi Lazar to interpret the Mishnah that is a case where he moved it less than 3 tfachim from the ground? And the only reason why you'd be chayav is if you tried to acquire it. But if you did not have intentions to acquire the patur, let the Mishnah be a case where it was above 3 tfachim. And he'd be chayav even if he did not want to be trying to acquire it. That would be the hidush. Gemara says, that we can't say that because of the wording of the Mishnah. Because why? Right? Because if it was going to be that he picked it up more than 3 tfachim, it would have said he picked up the dung, like we said earlier. But what did it say? He just turned it over. Teach you. When it says that he turned it over, it means it was under 3 tfachim. Okay. Yeah, we see from before that because our holds that you're filming a tefker, you're chayav for. Right, so now that we established that Lazar holds that you're chayav if it's tefker, Rabbi Yochanan was holds patur. The case. Someone hides a thorn or a shard of glass in public. Or someone makes a fence out of thorns. And facing or if a fence fell into Shtrabim, and someone got damaged by any of these things, Rabbi Yochanan says, the only time you're chayav is when the fence made out of thorns is when the thorns were sticking onto Shtrabim. If the thorns were sticking inward towards his private property, patur if someone goes in there. Patur if someone got damaged from the thorns inside your property. Considered like a pit in your own property, which sounds like Rabbi Yochanan would hold that the chiyuv for a bor is a reshut rabim. Alma mafkir neskav chayav, which means generally a ownerless item in reshut rabim chayav. The inference from the case of reshut aychid. Where it says la'olam imalach mafkir neskav patur. You'd hold that it's still patur if it's ownerless in reshut rabim. Why would be patur in your own fence, in your own land, if it's facing inward? Mishum de itmar, because we said because it's not common for people to rub against their walls that don't even face public property. So because of that, that's why you're patur. Another question. Is the Yochanan hold your chayav in other cases of public property? He holds that the halacha is like the following Mishnah. Utran. How hafer bor mushtarabim, someone digs a pit in mushtarabim. Then a fal to short or hamor umet, and an ox or a donkey fell inside. Chayav, you're chayav. So we see that you are chayav for something that you dug, and even if you made it hefker. Gemara says, really, if we get to the stomach of Yochanan saying chayav, no more patur, and therefore the other has to be patur. We don't really chayav, therefore the other has to be the patur side. But we said, as we said earlier, that Mishum Rabbi Shmuel, the name of Rabbi Shmuel, that two things are always chayav, even though you made them not chayav, not in your reshut, chametz and bor. Gemara says, not a problem. Not kasha. The opinion where he holds your patur is his own opinion. And when he said you're chayav, because the pasuk made you chayav by bor and chametz, he was just quoting his teacher, Rabbi Shmuel. New Mishnah. We just had this case. Someone pours water into Rishut Rabim, something got damaged, chayav ben eskoya chayav. Someone hides a thorn or a glass in public. Someone makes a fence out of thorns. Or if a fence fell in public property, and people got damaged by it, chayav ben eskoya chayav. Gemara says regarding the water. So when the guy his clothes got ruined by the water. But the guy slipped on his patur because, like we said earlier, karka olam hizakto. The ground hurt you. I didn't hurt you. Gemara says, if the water went into the ground and the guy got hurt by the ground, which is muddy because of this guy, then the mud hurt him. But who created the mud? This guy's water. So it is his problem. Where it says, I'm not talking about a case where the water had seeped into the mud. I'm talking about a case it didn't make it into mud. The water already seeped away. Where it says, how come you have two back-to-back mishnahs to tell you you're patur by water? We had this case, I think almost 3-4 weeks ago. Teach you that even in the case of a rainy season, you're also chayav, just like the summer season. Why? Like we said earlier, right? You're supposed to send out and empty out your pipes and your septic pits, the pits that they used to have there. They used to store their waste. You got to empty it out during the rainy season. But during the summer seasons, you can't. However, even though you have permission during the rainy seasons, even though you have permission to do it, it means you can you still chayav. Right, to teach you, so we have two cases of water to teach you, even in the times of the rainy seasons where you're allowed to throw out water, you're still responsible for it. Don't be careless with it. A couple more lines, something we did before. Rabbi Yochanan, someone hit the thorn, right? You're chayav for any damages. Regarding the guy who made the fence of thorns, we had this just now. Where the thorn is sticking outside your chayav. No, but if it's sticking into its own property, patur. My time of the patur. Because it's not common for people to rub themselves against the walls. So number 9. If someone had a thorn or a glass and he stuck it into his friend's wall, the owner demolished it, then and this thorn or glass fell into the public property, and it damaged someone there. The guy who hit it is chayav because he's the one who set up the process. Rabbi Yochanan, he says, 1 second, it makes a big difference. In the case of a weak, rickety, falling wall that looks obvious as set to be demolished soon, then he should have been careful. But in the case of a nice, strong wall that did not look like it was going to be demolished soon, the guy who hit it is patur, and the owner is of the wall is chayav because the guy who hit the thorn had no idea that it'll be demolished. Does that mean trying to bring one halakha to the next? If someone covers the pit, his own pit, with the lid of with someone else's property, with his someone else's item, and the guy saw his thing there and took it away, thereby uncovering the pit. Does that mean that therefore the owner of the pit is chayav for the damages the causes? Gemara says pshita. Of course, same exact halacha. Gemara says ma'od. Why in both cases? Hatam who maybe in the case of the bor in the wall, because he did not know the owner of the thorns did not know that he planned to demolish the wall. Regarding the pit, the other where the owner of the lid does know who the owner of the pit is, right? But she says that this is the case. We're talking about they know exactly who dug the pit, and he took away the lid without notifying him. However, you should have notified him, and therefore maybe he should be chayav. Kamash Milner for the Brata teaches you that even though you took away the lid from the pit that the guy dug, and you knew who the guy was, you did not have to chase after him to let him know, and you're still patur.